Hey everyone, welcome back to Urch Draws. I'm Urch, and today we're going to be taking a break from Overwatch. In fact, we're going to go ways back and we're going straight to Pokemon. So one thing I've always wanted to try is Pokemon. And as we all know, they're supposed to be cute. That's their selling point. But what happens when Pokemon get more realistic? And that's what I want to tackle today. So let's get into the video. So what I wanted to do was start with the 3 original starters. And using a reference, I quickly did a pencil drawing, gave it an outline in pen, and then I used the bright normal colors that you normally see in their sprites to give them a bright, happy look. And I wanted to do this as a baseline as we got into our more realistic Pokemon later on to see what the difference is. And as we all know, the base of our starters is we have a lizard for Charmander, a turtle for Squirtle, and a seed bug thing for Bulbasaur. I don't remember what its Pokedex says. So the first thing I did was start with pencil and laid down a basic sketch of how I wanted a more realistic Pokemon to look, and I used their core character attributes, the type of animal they're based on, to give me an idea of where I was going. Keeping some cuteness for the Pokemon, we started with Charmander, so I wanted to keep the bigger eyes that still kind of designated how a Pokemon looked, but instead of having smoother skin, I started adding a lot of scales and folds of skin to give him a much more realistic look. And for his hands and feet, I gave him larger claws that you would expect to see on a Pokemon that actually have to use them in the wild. Moving on to the pencil drawing for Squirtle, I kept the same bigger eyes, however, kind of like Charmander with the scales, I gave Squirtle more blocky and textured skin to make it look more realistic, as well as a large beak and a more turtle-looking mouth. And his extremities are more kind of flappy, giving it a realistic look. For the most part, his shell's gonna stay the same because, a turtle shell's a turtle shell. Moving on to Bulbasaur, I wasn't quite sure which direction I wanted to take it because it's mostly kind of a smooth skin green. However, I envisioned him more as a tougher skin, kind of rock-like creature, not in his type, just in the way he looked, that had more like moss growing on him, more than the normal shaped marks he has on his skin. And the bulb he had on his back is more bottom heavy to give it more weight to the creature. Quickly before I color them, I just go over them with a fine liner, just so I have the shape, and they all have an outline where I know I want to designate the colors on the creatures. Now, keeping the same colors of the starters, red, blue, and green, one thing that I thought would make them more realistic than anything else is by desaturating the colors that I used. So like you can see here on Squirtle, so I start with the base layer of gray, which will mute some of the colors that I put down afterwards, and then move slowly into my darker colors, but each blue that I'm choosing isn't a vibrant color, it's more of a muted dark color. And then to tone down the brightness of each of these colors more, I go over it with pinks and greens, which will mute more of the colors again. And then if I want to mute the color even more, I'll go over it with another gray. After doing his shell and keeping that same type of muted tone going, moving on to his arms, I wanted him to have more of a textured, blotchy feeling to him. So I again put down my grays. So after I put down some of my darker blues, I actually start dabbing and blotting the marker so that you get some of those more skin-like textures in there. Moving on to Charmander, it's much of a similar thing. I lay down a light layer of muted peach before I then go over it with darker and darker muted colors, keeping that same kind of dotting and blotting pattern going so that I continue to have that same type of skin texture to it. And then at the very end, I went over it with my darkest muting colors, which are my dark browns and my darker blues. Moving to Bulbasaur, and keeping with that more of a kind of rocky tone texture, I keep a lot of grays in the skin to give it that darker, more mottled look, kind of like stone, but still like flesh. And the last thing on Bulbasaur, when doing the moss that's growing off of him, I use muted greens, and then in his bulb, I use darker and darker greens as I go to give the bulb more weight like I want it to. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this piece. On the left, we have our original cute starters looking happy, and then to the right, we have our more realistic looking starters who still have a little bit of cuteness to them, but they're also something that you don't look like you want to cross. I'm pretty happy for the most part, the way the skin came out. I like the way they're textured. I love the way that the muted colors come together and give it a more realistic vibe. And overall, I think it gives them a pretty cool look. As always, if you want to tell me how I did, leave a comment below. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, go ahead and subscribe. And remember to hit that bell icon next to it so you get notifications for whenever my videos go live. And I will see you guys in the next one. Now go make something.